Welcome to episode 256 of the AGEIST Podcast. I'm David Stewart, and with me today, as always, my host, Margaret May.
David, how are you on this cloudy day over there?
You know, I'm doing well. It was a little brighter early in the day, and then there was this sort of moment, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. All of a sudden, like, tornado comes, like, that's what it looked like, but that passed, and so it's a little brighter, but it's raining today.
Speaking of Dorothy, have you heard that, it's just going to be so random, but that conspiracy that the Dark Side of the Moon album, if you play it over the Wizard of Oz movie with no audio, it lines up thematically in a really wild way.
Margaret, have you been taking psychedelics?
The people who have this theory might have been doing that, because that's the only way you would discover that, but yeah, just throwing that out.
Okay.
Write in, let us know if you knew that. But this week, we are speaking with the brilliant Dr. Cathy Eason. She is a clinical and functional nutritionist who's been doing fascinating work around nitric oxide, especially how it impacts women in midlife and so much more.
We naturally lose our ability to produce nitric oxide endogenously in the body through enzyme functions as we age. And nobody's getting younger the last I checked, so we better pay attention to this. We do know that by improving our bioavailability of nitric oxide, we can reverse and repair some of that blood vessel damage. We get sidetracked by symptoms, we get sidetracked by disease states, we get sidetracked by research on the new shiny cool biohacking tools and stuff. I'm excited because this education is so important to healthy aging, to longevity, but not just longevity for a longer lifespan, longevity for a healthy lifespan as we continue to age.
She's got some really surprising insights into energy, hormone balance, and even hot flashes. If you've ever felt like your get up and go has gotten up and gone, then this episode is for you.
We will also be highlighting 3 big stories from the world of Wellness and Longevity Week, and some of them may even change how you think about aging entirely.
Love that. And stick around to hear this week's It's Not Too Late story and how you can get featured on this podcast or on our stories page on the AGEIST website.
All that and more coming up after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Berkeley Life, supporting one of the most important molecules for healthy aging, nitric oxide. After 40, your body makes about half as much of it, which can affect your heart, brain, energy, and even sex life. Berkeley Life's 2-a-day formula helps restore nitric oxide levels. Listeners get 20% off plus 10 free test strips with code AGEIST at berkeleylife.com. The first time I cooked a new Ohana Reserve Aged Cut from Maui Nui venison, I knew I couldn't go back. This isn't just meat. It's wild harvested axis deer from Maui, aged 14 days for that deep, rich flavor that makes you stop mid-bite. No feedlots, no antibiotics, just clean, nutrient-dense venison that feels as good as it tastes. Subscribe now at mauinuivenison.com/aegis and get a free 12-pack of venison jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. That's MAUINUI venison.com/aegis. You'll never look at beef the same again. You know, I've learned over the years that real wellness begins with one thing: sleep. Not just more sleep, but better sleep. That's where Oslo Sleep Buds come in. They're not just another gadget. They're a science-backed wearable designed to help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up restored. Ultra comfortable, even for side sleepers with soundscapes designed by sleep scientists, these little things truly make a difference. Right now, through the end of September, you can save $50 on Oslo Sleep Buds and get 1 free year of Calm Sleep Premium. Just use the link in our show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. Let's give Dr. Cathy Eason a call. Cathy, wonderful to see you. Where does this podcast find you today?
This podcast finds me in beautiful Central Oregon. I'm in Bend. It is a glorious sunny morning this morning. I've already had my feet in the grass and my face in the sun, and it's pretty much how I start every day here.
Nice. Very nice. So let's just get into it. Today is going to be all about nitric oxide, which is, I have to say, was a bit off of my radar until recently. Why does this matter to me or anyone else? Why should someone even think about this molecule? It's all about oxygen, right? And like the other gases.
Oxygen and so much more. It's really the premise of aging well and aging healthfully. It's a tiny little molecule. It's 2 atoms. We produce it naturally in the body, and we break it down from dietary nitrates in foods we eat. We are depleting it at a rapid rate as we continue to age. It is responsible for things like improving your blood flow, regulating your blood pressure, improving the tissue integrity of nearly every tissue in the body. It signals immune responses, it signals hormone balance and neurotransmitter function and gastric motility so your digestive system stays healthy. There's not a system in the body that nitric oxide does not touch. That's why we should be concerned.
Why is nobody else talking about this?
Well, actually, you are hearing more people talk about it now. We did a search on Amazon to see some of the most commonly searched terms, and you can see this dramatic interest in nitric oxide just in the last year and a half. At Berkeley Life, we like to think it's because we're putting a lot of education out, so we want everybody to know how important this is. I think it's too simple, and it's not flashy enough, and it's not, it's not the squirrel that runs through the room and gets a lot of attention. It's something that's so foundational to health that we forget about it, and we forget about the ways that we haven't been trained how to rebuild it and replenish it in our bodies. We naturally lose our ability to produce nitric oxide endogenously in the body through enzyme functions as we age. And nobody's getting younger the last I checked, so we better pay attention to this. We do know that by improving our bioavailability of nitric oxide, we can reverse and repair some of that blood vessel damage. We can turn blood pressure regulation on the positive side, and we can keep our heart healthy throughout the lifespan, or the health span, as I like to call it. So this is why it's so important and why we want everybody over the age of 35 to know about this.
This first came on my radar via a cardiologist
Yeah.
some time ago, but I've since learned a lot more. Well, I've had a lot of personal experience with it. I don't have any cardiac issues, thank God, by testing myself, testing my levels. So what I want to do here is I want to ask you, if I don't have enough nitric oxide, what kind of bad stuff is going to happen to me?
Okay, well, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have increasing oxidative stress in the interior of the blood vessels. There's a structure inside the blood vessels called the endothelial glycocalyx. Oxidative stress will cause inflammation that breaks down that glycocalyx. Along with not producing nitric oxide, you're going to start building up platelet aggregation that could be, starting to look like atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis. So you're setting the stage for inhibited blood flow, which then decreases the amount of oxygen you get to carry around the body and your red blood cells carry around the body, and it decreases your nutrient delivery to all the tissues of the body. So in a sense, you're not going to be fueling your body appropriately if you're lacking this important molecule that keeps that vasculature happy and healthy and contributing all throughout the body. And you're going to start to see tissue decline that then turns into organ dysfunction. And when organs start to not work so well, you start to see signs and symptoms of your systems breaking down. And this is promoting aging and advanced aging faster than it needs to.
So that all seems like something happening in the future to me. All very important, but still, I'll just tell you what I found. So I spent about half the year living at around 7,000 feet. I spend the other half of the year at sea level. And always, when I go to 7,000 feet, I don't sleep well for the first 4 days. I have a headache. There's this whole altitude thing that goes on. And then I started taking a nitric oxide supplement for a couple of days beforehand. And then while I was there, 0 altitude symptoms. Why is that?
The reason is twofold. One of the many, many roles of nitric oxide is that it generates something called mitochondrial biogenesis. That is the creation of new, healthy mitochondria. We take 2 older, less functional mitochondria. This is your energy center of your cell. It's also where we derive a lot of oxygen that gets delivered to red blood cells and carried throughout the body. When those mitochondria don't work so well, nitric oxide signals the regenesis, the putting together of 2 faulty mitochondria for the creation of 1 healthy new one that tends to now uptick your energy. And this is what most people tell us when they start to take a dietary nitrate supplement. They feel the energy boost within days, really. And that's one thing that I know when I miss taking my supplement, I don't have the same energy that I have every other day. So I don't miss a dose anymore. And the other thing that's happening is because you've improved this mitochondrial function, you've now improved oxygen delivery and oxygen exchange. When we boost blood flow. We boost the ability of red blood cells to carry oxygen to the tissues that need them. The mitochondria are looking for oxygen for their energy production cycle, known as the electron transport chain. And when you increase the efficiency of oxygen exchange, everything's going to work better, and you're going to have less of that air hunger, maybe a headache that you felt, because you're going to have better blood flow at elevation despite the oxygen in the air being a little less.
So I told this to one of my athlete friends who is a former internationally competitive athlete. And she's just like 53, 54. And she was going to Breckenridge, Colorado. And I told her about this. And I said, you should take this before you go for your bike ride in the morning. And so she does this. And she calls me later in the day. And she was like, oh my God, turbo mode. What happened? Like, I crushed my boyfriend. I have no idea I've never done this before. Tell me, what's going on here? Is it the same thing? It's better oxygen delivery?
It's better oxygen delivery. It's better energy output. So she was being more efficient with her
Uh,
mitochondria. Each cell in the body has hundreds and hundreds of mitochondria, and they're kicking out that ATP molecule, that energy molecule. One of the things about using dietary nitrates to boost that is it doesn't require oxygen in the bloodstream. It's a very simple electron
uh,
exchange between molecules to reduce
uh.
dietary nitrates to nitrite, a smaller molecule, to nitric oxide. And it's very efficient in an anaerobic state. So part of what was going on for her is she's getting better oxygen uptake and she's getting better exchange. And then hopefully she's practicing some good breathing techniques while she's on her bike at elevation, because that's another way to boost nitric oxide is through nasal breathing. And we talk about it I talk about it with my nutrition patients all the time about, this is a habit you need to retrain yourself. And a lot of times athletes, especially people who are working at that intensity, they tend to breathe through their mouth too much, and regulating their nasal breathing not only improves oxygen uptake, it also sort of tones the nervous system
Mm-hmm.
so that the nervous system signals to the body are operating at their peak and you can have a better performance. So all that was going on with her while she was crushing her boyfriend. They may have also had an ulterior reason why she was so committed to meeting him that day, um, but we'll have to ask her about that.
I've noticed absolutely in the gym, and it's taken some retraining, lifting weights or something. If I can force myself to breathe in through my nose, what you were saying, there's some sort of nervous regulation that happens and everything calms down.
It puts your autonomic think about it, you're in the gym, you're getting pumped up to lift your next set of weights. You need some energy for that, right?
Mm.
And your mitochondria are kicking out energy, but you're also having a hormone and neurotransmitter response to kind of focus on the task and pump you up a little bit to, get you doing this. All that is very excitatory, and when you breathe through the nostrils, it sends a signal to the brain to tone especially the vagus nerve, but to tone the autonomic nervous system. That's your rest and digest, parasympathetic, and your fight or flight, sympathetic stage. It tones it and centers it so that all that signaling can happen in a more balanced, appropriate way for you to meet the demands of the time. If your body is simultaneously worried about the guy racing to the next piece of equipment that you want to use in the gym, and you're also, trying to do nasal breathing, that stress response, even though it's just, you could wait for that piece of equipment, but your body doesn't know that. It's still a stress, and there's still a hormonal response. There's a little adrenaline going. When you rush into that next set of weights with that adrenaline going, you're not gonna be as efficient because your nervous system needs to balance it with a little bit more tone, is what we call it, between those two aspects of the nervous system. And nitric oxide plays a role in signaling that.
I just want to shift here to a couple of things because there's some fascinating things that I'm reading here about women and midlife and menopause and nitric oxide and how the implication of that for menopause symptoms, hot flashes, memory fog, things like that. This is entirely new to me. Tell me, what's going on here?
I'll tell you, in my late 50s, this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this education, because I want to protect my heart health as well as my patients, my friends, my loved ones. I live in an active town with active friends. We're all aging, but we still want to charge and we still want to, ski and then follow it up with a bike ride later in the day and all those things. But mostly, I want to keep my friends' hearts healthy. What we know about the menopausal decline in hormone, I should say, is that as estrogen declines, what happens to nitric oxide production is it dramatically drops at the same time. Part of that is because estrogen both signals the need for nitric oxide because it has a relationship with estrogen binding on hormone receptor sites. So sometimes as women are losing their estrogen levels, they're also losing that sensitivity at a hormone receptor location. So the hormone just doesn't work as well as it should. Those hormone receptors also reside in the same tissues where our body makes nitric oxide. We need the two to be coupled, if you will, so that the enzyme function works well, the nitric oxide is responding to the signals from estrogen. So as estrogen declines, there's a dramatic drop in nitric oxide. It gets worse and worse over time because without nitric oxide, you can't repair the very tissue that makes nitric oxide. So supplementing with something that supports the repair of that tissue and the natural stimulation of our body to make nitric oxide is going to make the hormones work better. It's going to make the menopausal symptoms a little less traumatic, and it's going to be heart protective because we know that as nitric oxide plummets, we also see a correlation to women's cardiovascular disease risk going up. Heart disease in women and in men, but heart disease in women is a silent killer. It's still the number one killer of women in the country and in many countries in the world too. And it's a big educational piece. We're trying to get out that this is not just to go to Pilates or the gym and have more energy and crush your workout to keep your body as fit as it was when you were 25. This is about being preventive for heart health. And you mentioned, you feel like you're years and years away from that. And that's because those of us who live in this wellness lifestyle that we live, we often don't think about our end days. I think about it every day because I'm going to be that person going out, maybe skiing down a hill or, doing something active and fun with a big smile on my face. I just won't allow myself to be debilitated the older I get. And this is a way to do it by keeping your primary organ of life, your heart, healthy and happy, and your blood vessels too.
One of the things that I love about nitric oxide is that you can test for it. So there are these
Yes.
strips, you put them under your tongue, and right away you can see like deficient or not. So I'm fairly spunky, but I'm 66. Okay, let's get real here. I'm 66. So I put the thing under my tongue, and there's virtually no color change. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking like, oh, that's not good. And I try and do all the stuff, that I'm supposed to do. So I eat a lot of leafy green stuff. I eat arugula. I go out in the sun. I sleep. Very little impact. The thing that really moves the needle, though, I take, a supplement like the Berkey Life supplement, and then I test again 45 minutes later, and boom, bright fuchsia. Talk to me first about the testing, and then why at my, advanced age here, I can't do this on my own. It pisses me off. Like, I just want to why can't I do that?
Because you're an athlete and you want to win. And this is a common response. Yeah. Right. So it requires a little bit of education first. So when we eat dietary nitrates, they're known as inorganic dietary nitrates. They are in things like spinach, arugula, beetroot, celery, rhubarb, little understood source of dietary nitrates. But when we eat them, we chew nitrates, we swallow them. We have a pathway now that these nitrates have to go through to make nitric oxide in our body. It's like we have to eat them twice, and I'll tell you what that means. We eat the dietary nitrates. I want everybody to chew their leafy green vegetables really well because this is important for getting the nitrates away from the proteins that they're bound to in any food, whether it's kale, spinach, arugula, beets. So we chew our food. When we swallow those nitrates, they are acted upon by the healthy acidity levels of your gastrointestinal system. So you need some good digestive function. And it sounds like if you're able to turn that test strip pink in 45 minutes, you've probably got pretty good digestive function. Those nitrates now get assimilated into the bloodstream. And in the bloodstream, they circulate. They go through oxidative, reductive reactions. It's an electron transfer between molecules. We reduce nitrates down to nitric oxide. What doesn't get utilized gets excreted through the kidneys, and what gets stored circulates in the bloodstream to your salivary glands. You have storage lockers of nitrate in your salivary gland. Stay with me here. Now, also in your oral cavity, you have commensal beneficial microbes that live as part of your oral microbiome. They live specifically, the ones that break down nitrates into the smaller compounds live in the back of the mouth, towards the posterior, on the top of the tongue, around that area. So when you're testing, what you're testing is saliva that has been acted upon by the oral microbes. The oral microbes are all day long as you salivate, are getting bathed in stored nitrate. They convert nitrate to nitrite. Nitrite is one step closer to nitric oxide. We swallow it. Now it's easier to ingest and assimilate nitrite. You have a more available ingredient, raw ingredient, a substrate to make nitric oxide in the moment. And as you continue to do other practices, lifestyle practices we can talk about to build nitric oxide in the bloodstream, you will become more efficient at recycling those. So what's happening with the test strips? We have a test strip. We salivate on it. I took my supplement about not very long ago, about half an hour ago. We'll see how I'm doing. By the way, I was pretty deficient this morning myself, and I
Do you
take it
touch
every day.
yourself every morning?
I do, because I like to hack it. I like to see what's
Okay.
happening. I'm trying to figure out what I call my patterns of depletion. And it's hard to see here, but I'm not very bright pink yet. I want to be, the pinker the better. If I test this and I'm low, I'm going to be white or light pink. And I think that's what you're telling me
Yeah.
that you're
I
experiencing.
was white.
What we challenge is like you take a morning test. Overnight, nitric oxide has contributed to dozens of physiological functions, everything from digestion, blood sugar regulation and metabolism, immune functions, detoxification. Nitric oxide has contributed to all of that. And by the way, back to those menopausal signs, nitric oxide plays a role in regulating the sleep-wake cycle, so it helps menopausal women with their sleep. It plays a role in signaling the hypothalamus to help regulate hormone release. So it's doing all these things. You wake up in the morning, you're low. You take a dose of dietary nitrate support. You wait 45 to 90 minutes later and you test again, and you should see some progression on the test strip. Sounds like you're seeing that. What that tells us is that your oral microbiome contains the right quantity, diversity, and populations of nitrate-reducing bacterial species to help you break down those dietary nitrates. So now the question becomes, why are you waking up so low? Well, for one thing, nitrates in the body only have a half-life of about 8 hours. That's why they are recycled for storage, or they are excreted from the body via the urine. We can't store them. We don't develop what's known as tolerance. You can eat spinach every day and still need to eat spinach the next day because you won't maintain the nitrates in that spinach for very long. Why is this happening to you? Because of oxidative stress and the natural endothelial decline in production of nitric oxide as you age. So we really can't totally stop that age-related decline in production. What we can do is prevent it from worsening. We can do some tissue repair. We know that nitric oxide stimulates stem cells to help you repair the interior of the blood vessels so that they can then produce more nitric oxide. So we need to keep those systems well-fueled and well-functioning. But the other reasons that you might be depleting yourself more quickly and waking up low every morning is because you simply have oxidative stress. You live in the city, you have environmental toxins around you. That's an oxidative stress. I'm guessing your diet is pretty good, so we're not going to blame the diet. You love to exercise. Perhaps you over-exercise in terms of the level of oxidative stress and
I feel
tissue
like we're getting very
breakdown
personal here, Cathy.
that it creates. Well, you asked me. You asked me. And then just, busy people with busy lives, whether we feel emotionally stressed or not, emotional stress is an oxidative stressor. This has been well studied in the literature. It's related to imbalances that turn into conditions like diabetes, and it's involved in development of heart health issues and so on. So the key is great, you're sleeping. I think you're getting in nature daily. That's another way that we encourage that. You mentioned getting in the sun, and we know that vitamin D3 and nitric oxide have a direct relationship, that actual sunlight, UV sunlight, stimulates nitric oxide production in our tissues. And so that's an important part of getting your face in the sun every day when possible. So all those things. And then the nasal breathing that I talked about. We close our mouths and we breathe through the nasal cavities. We build more nitric oxide production in the parasinuses and in the maxillary sinus cavities, and we build it right there directly. Great for improving energy, but also mental clarity and cognition, because now we're boosting blood flow directly to the brain and getting some better brain function as a result.
Before we go any deeper into the science of nitric oxide, let's take a moment to thank the folks who make this show possible. I want to talk to you guys about one of the most overlooked keys to longevity, nitric oxide. It's a molecule your body uses for blood flow, cognition, energy, and even sexual function. The problem? By the time you're 40, your nitric oxide levels drop by about half. That's a big deal. It means your heart, brain, and energy aren't getting the same support they once did. That's why I recommend Berkeley Life. Their foundation formula is just 2 capsules a day. Clinical trials show it can lower blood pressure, improve key health markers, and even enhance sexual satisfaction. They've also created a simple 10-second saliva test strip so you can actually measure your nitric oxide levels and track your progress. Our AGEIST listeners get 20% off your first purchase plus 10 free test strips with code AGEIST at berkeleylife.com. That's berkeleylife.com, code AGEIST. We talk a lot about what goes into our food, but rarely do we think about where it comes from, how the animal lived, what it ate, whether it ever saw the sun. The first time I cooked Maui Nui's Ohana Reserve venison, I could taste the difference. This was meat that lived well and free, and it shows. Remember, no stress, no hormones, just clean, nutrient-dense, unbelievably tender wild venison aged for 14 days. What's more, you feel better after eating it. That's not hype. It's 22 grams of protein per 100 calories and a freedom you can taste. But this isn't in stores. It's subscription only. The Ohana Reserve box gives you 3 premium aged cuts, ground venison, and jerky sticks delivered frozen right to your door. Go to mauinuivenison.com/ageist and grab your box before subscriptions fill, and get this. They are throwing in a free 12-pack of jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. That's MAUINUI venison.com/ageist. Once you've tried this, nothing else measures up. So you mentioned the word, I always get them confused, nitrate good, so that comes from vegetable. But then if I go to the grocery store and there's some bacon and it says, I believe it says nitrite-free bacon. But do I want to eat nitrite? I'm confused here.
Yeah, there's been a lot of misunderstanding about things like cured meats, bacon, and the quality of them. So poorer quality cured meats are going to they're going to use something like sodium nitrite from a questionable source, because you don't know what that manufacturer is using. It's not that the sodium nitrite is questionable. It's commonly used as a preservative. You know where else we get sodium nitrite is in celery. So you might also sometimes see a higher quality bacon that is cured with celery salt. It is the same thing. It is the poor quality and the overconsumption. Let's just pick on pepperoni for a second, very concentrated, well-preserved food. If it's not made in the old country, in the old preservative ways with a regular salt, like a celery salt, chances are good it's been a rush through its curing process with something that's synthetically produced in a lab. We want to avoid those. We want things as close to nature as possible. What these nitrates and nitrites are is they are mineral salts. For instance, in the Berkeley Life product, we use potassium nitrate, directly plant-derived, the proprietary blend of greens, but also fermented beetroot to increase the bioavailability of the nitrates for making nitric oxide. And so unless you're that person who's eating charcuterie every single day, you are probably fine having a few cured meats in your body. I would just encourage purchasing the highest quality you can and looking for things with, no sodium benzoate and potassium sorbate. Those are also types of preservatives that are just less healthy for the body, especially in concentrations.
Thank you for that. Because I don't eat a lot of bacon, but I have a secret, what human or dog does not go insane for bacon, right? Anyway.
I call myself a recovered vegetarian, and bacon might be a gateway meat for a lot of people who
Yeah.
need to get some omnivore habits back into their life.
I didn't much of it, but I enjoy it. When we were first talking before we came on, you mentioned that when you first heard about nitric oxide, it was this whole gym bro thing. Gym bro sounds so derogatory. Maybe we can think of a better word for that. Whatever. We'll just go with gym bro. Everybody knows what that means. So why are those dudes taking nitric oxide? Why would they want this?
So it's well studied that nitric oxide, boosting nitric oxide through supplementation, especially, and in addition to lifestyle habits like diet, it's well studied that it improves physical performance. It can lead to an increase in VO2 max. It can lead to an increase in muscle recovery. What's happening is you're getting that better oxygen
Yeah.
exchange. You are improving blood flow, improving waste product removal from muscles. So you're able to remove lactate from muscles. Muscle soreness goes down. That was part of the reason why, especially weightlifters, were looking for a way to increase their muscle output. And there's great studies done on that. There's also great studies done on that at elevation too, which is kind of interesting, showing that oxygen exchange is more appropriate. So it really became well known as a performance aid. Right now, I serve on a committee for an international sports organization, and I'm part of the anti-doping committee. And I check the WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency website all the time for athletes using different supplements, to ensure that they can safely compete while using this. And right now, anything that contributes to nitric oxide production is not banned. And so there's now a lot of athletes beyond just the weightlifters and beyond just the bodybuilders is kind of where it got a big boost there. You see competitive cyclists and runners, and especially long distance runners. I know the Tour de France racers are all using a dietary nitrate support to help boost their nitric oxide because of that enhanced oxygen delivery and exchange and the ability to recover faster. And that's really well studied in the literature. That's why we heard about it in the bro culture in the gym. I've lost track of how many physiological mechanisms of nitric oxide there are. It's a very potent signaling molecule. And as I said earlier, there's not a system it doesn't touch. And so it's very important when we're talking about, let's take a common popular medication being used for health today, and that's the GLP-1 inhibitors. That's people looking for, weight loss reduction. Well, guess what? Nitric oxide plays a role in improving the ability of the cells to take up glucose
Yeah.
and to respond better to insulin sensitivity. It has huge implications for preventing metabolic disease, for preventing things like diabetes
Yeah.
and all the implications of that. So very important that we, trace these things back to the root need so that we can learn more about it. And guess what? Anytime you boost blood flow, you improve the efficacy of everything else you're using in your daily protocols, whether it's supplements, diet, exercise. You're going to have enhanced energy. You're going to have better blood flow. Your blood pressure is going to be better regulated. The ability of, say, an additional supplement you're taking to get around the body to the tissues that it needs is improved as soon as you improve blood flow with nitric oxide. Very, very foundational element to protocols, and especially for those of us 40, 35 and beyond. I used to say 40, but guess what? There are younger and younger people displaying evidence of extreme oxidative stress because of lifestyle and because of just this culture we live in these days. And so we see younger people with fertility issues and sexual dysfunction issues and weight imbalances and hormonal imbalances. So we want to get the message out that the time to start thinking about nitric oxide was yesterday. So get on the bandwagon and, let's help improve it with diet, lifestyle, and supplement measures.
We, several years ago, had Dr. Max Testa on this show, and Max was the team doctor for, I think at that point, 27 Tour de France's. And yes, these are the most highly conditioned athletes on the planet. And every single one of them is taking a nitric oxide supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In what they sacrifice for that high level of conditioning is oxidative stress.
That's
And
what I was
we
going
would
to say.
see,
Yeah.
yeah, we would see this in, by tests of their circulation and other inflammatory blood markers that would be tested by him as the team physician. And so good for him for being on top of that very foundational need for that high level class athlete.
Can we go here? Can we go into like the Viagra realm here?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about women and estrogen, But one of the other things that, Viagra targets, and by the way, Viagra is also big on the Tour de France for other reasons. But I understand that Viagra helps with vasodilation and is sort of parallel to what we're talking about here. But help me articulate this.
So medications like Viagra, Cialis,
Yeah.
they're known as PDE5 inhibitors, and they
Okay.
do the same mechanistic action as nitric oxide in the body, which is to signal vasodilation. So
Okay.
nitric oxide sends a signal, it increases a protein that then sends another signal that generates a lot of the raw ingredient needed to make nitric oxide in the body but therefore boosts blood flow. The Viagras and the Cialis, they operate on the same premise. We need to boost blood flow to the reproductive organs so that erection is possible. And by the way, this isn't just for male sexual function, it's for female sexual function as well, too. Because along with boosting blood flow, you have an increase in oxytocin, the love hormone, the connection hormone. You have the ability for men, it's important for maintaining erection. But part of why those Tour de France players or cyclists are also using it is not just for their sexual function, but because it is an indirect blood flow booster for the whole body. When you take Viagra, it's not going to just localize the effect to the reproductive organ. It's going to happen to the blood flow all throughout the body. So they're working on the same premise. And in fact, we have several practitioner partners in our Berkeley Life community who use nitric oxide support specifically for their protocols for erectile dysfunction, for female sexual dysfunction. Berkeley Life is really proud to be contributing to the science in this regard. We just did a female sexual function clinical trial based on the wild success of a pilot study. Now we've done a phase 1 trial with great results, and the top 2 results that came out of the last study were enhanced orgasm, increased desire, and less pain with sex. And I think every woman listening to this today would love to have that happen in their life. We believe that sexual function is important to quality of life for men and women, and we want to be part of the solution and study the results of this. So we're going to keep doing larger clinical trials so that women get some of the same studies that men get. There's been a lot of studies on erectile dysfunction, not so much on female dysfunction. We're going to level the playing field there.
Well done. As we look forward with this, what are the things that are exciting you out there? What are you seeing? I mean, we have these studies going on, which are tremendous. Like, what's going on in the nitric oxide world looking forward?
Yeah, I think what's exciting to me is just the conversation around it, because I'll admit, it's really basic biochemistry, but when I talk to hundreds of healthcare practitioners every month, and it's amazing to me how quickly we all forget that basic biochemistry and these important reactions happening at this very chemical level in our body, because we get sidetracked by symptoms, we get sidetracked by disease states, we get sidetracked by research on the new shiny cool biohacking tools and stuff. I'm excited because this education is so important to healthy aging, to longevity, but not just longevity for a longer lifespan, longevity for a healthy lifespan as we continue to age. I want to help be part of the solution to prevent heart disease in women and men. What else is exciting out there? And I say this from a clinical standpoint now, that in my own patient population, with dietary nitrate support daily, I have seen the need for other supplements reduced. It's reducing the supplement stack for many, many of my patients. They feel better. The top 2 things I hear every day are, I have improved energy and I have better mental clarity. And by the way, I'm sleeping better. I seem to have dropped a little bit of my belly fat, and I'm not so anxious as I was before. So I can really see the implications of it. So to me, it's exciting too. I want my patients spending money on quality food and quality vacations and time with family and friends. I would rather they not down so many pills. I want them to have a lifestyle hack, and I teach them all the other functional ways they can build nitric oxide in the body. So we're not just relying on a supplement. We're building a habit and a lifestyle around it that is very foundational to health. I think the exciting thing that's coming for Berkeley Life and our scientific advisory board is a menopausal study next year. And we're in the process of getting the International Review Board to approve our proposal. It will be high quality research, double blinded, placebo controlled, as we always contribute to. And I think it's going to be a game changer for women to start to actually suffer less and experience more joie de vivre as they go through that transitional part of life. And by the way, we don't talk about this enough, but men also have their hormonal transitions. So whenever we can boost blood flow, prevent heart disease, and improve the flow and utilization of hormones around the body, male or female, I think we're winning the game, and we're starting to combat some of the stressors that life throws at us daily that maybe didn't used to be here historically when we first started walking the planet. So that's kind of my goal, is to bring us back to root cause, back to nature, and make things a little simpler for everybody, but also with really palpable results.
I mean, as I think about this, if your blood flow is not working as well as it could, your capillary system, this is not just like relegated to one part of the body. As you said, it's everything. It's systemic. So that includes your brain. And you're going to think better. I think that there's a lot of these sort of things that are like, oh, they're just having a senior moment, or, I think so much of this is really around really simple stuff like blood flow, like your endothelium. Is this working or not? How well are your capillaries? How well can they expand and contract? That affects everything. Oh, there's one other thing I want to bring up to people. So, sorry to jump around here for a second. You mentioned the oral biome. This is really key. Talk to me about mouthwash, using
Yes.
mouthwash and the oral biome. This is a big no-no.
It is a big no-no, and I just returned recently from annual session conference for the American Academy of Oral and Systemic Health. These providers get it. These are dentists, periodontists, endodontists, airway passage specialists, MDs, osteopathic doctors. They get the message that what they were trained in, and I say they collectively, was that the mouth should be a sterile place and we should kill every microbe inside of it. And that, by the way, the mouth is completely separate from the rest of the body. When I first started studying nutrition, over 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, I learned really quickly that what you put in your mouth and how you assimilated it was key to nutrition and key to health. It is the gateway to health. So all of these, they're called chlorhexidine-based mouthwashes. They're very antiseptic, antimicrobial. There's lots of toothpastes out on the commercial market that are just full of those things. And then even some natural remedies like, say, excessive oil pulling, which has ancient traditions in Ayurvedic medicine, but it's actually very highly antimicrobial. The longer you use these things, even essential oils used in excess that are antimicrobial, you're going to wear down the appropriate balance of microbes in the oral microbiome. Now what you're risking is dampening down the number and quantity of those nitrate-reducing species. We have at least 9 families of bacteria in the oral cavity, and within each family are dozens of species. Those nitrate-reducing bacteria, the nitrates are coming from the saliva. They're bathing the bacteria. The bacteria secrete their own enzyme. It's called nitrate reductase. They start to break down the process for it. We can't live without these commensal, symbiotic, beneficial bacteria that also then help us dampen down the quantities of the more pathogenic ones, the ones that cause cavities and the ones that cause halitosis, bad breath, and the ones that cause gum disease. By eating dietary nitrates daily, by ensuring that we have adequate recycling to our salivary glands that bathes those microbes daily, we ensure the balance of the oral microbiome, and now we start to see health improve. And this was a big feature at the Oral Systemic Health Conference, is they are interested in being on the front line of cardiovascular disease prevention by talking to their patients about getting those unhealthy mouthwashes and toothpaste out of their life. Most of those physicians will tell you the mechanical act of brushing and flossing your teeth is enough. with pure water. We actually don't need it. And you think about what we might have done when we first started walking the earth, we probably picked a twig and picked our teeth with it. And that's how we cleaned our mouth. It was a natural habit that we did. We just developed it into some minty fresh thing that we don't really need. There
Um,
are many good toothpaste and mouth rinses on the more healthy side of the spectrum. I could point you to a couple. Stella Life is one that I would highly recommend, and they are designed to maintain that balance of oral microbes so that your body and your health get the full function of them.
We've got more to cover with Dr. Eason, but first, if you've been curious about optimizing your daily energy, this next message might be especially relevant. One of the things I've learned after talking with thousands of people about health and longevity is that sleep is the foundation. You can eat right, exercise, meditate, but if you're not sleeping deeply, you're starting from behind. That's why I've been using Oslo Sleep Buds. They're not your average earplugs. These are a science-backed sleep wearable that actually helps you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. I love that they're designed for all-night comfort. Even as a side sleeper, I barely notice them. And here's what really impressed me. The audio isn't just white noise. It's engineered by neuroscientists to settle the mind and block out everything, from city noise to a snoring partner. When I wake up after a night with Oslo, I feel more restored, clearer, more optimistic about the day ahead. And I can tell you, at my age, that kind of restorative sleep makes all the difference. Now through the end of September, you can save $50 on Oslo Sleep Buds and get 1 free year of Calm Sleep Premium from the creators of Calm, a new app designed for deeper, personalized sleep support. Just use the link in our show notes to get the offer. I want to sort of wrap up and review here because I feel like there was a lot of nitrite science we've gone through here. So the one thing is, all right, don't use a chemical mouthwash. That's bad. That's going to wipe out whatever sort of good stuff you're doing. That's just going to kill it. You need those microbes. The second thing is, it's so easy to test for nitric oxide. It's the easiest thing in the world. It takes 15 seconds and you'll just know. So unlike some other supplements or other things that maybe you got to get your blood work done every 3 months or 6. This is like an immediate thing. And you just put it on your tongue. Okay, what color is it? Bright pink? You're doing awesome. Me, white? Not awesome. You need to do something about this. So what you suggested was reduce your oxidative stress. For somebody like me, that's a little difficult. I sort of swim in oxidative stress. That's my world. Try and get some sleep. Try and get a little sunshine. Try and eat green leafy vegetables. But like if you're like me, the only thing that I've seen turn that strip from white to pink is taking a nitric oxide supplement. And I have real world experience of how this affects me at altitude. I haven't done like a before and after VO2 max test, but it makes sense to me that would just be better.
There are studies out there showing improvements in VO2 max. A lot of them are inconclusive simply because they're using beetroot powder. And as you've already stated, not every nitrate food has the same content depending on the soils, depending on when it's grown. And that's very true of beets, is the nitrate concentration really differs depending on which crop of beets is being tested at the time. I think things for people to recognize is that, yes, testing is important, and testing frequently is important because your body will go through patterns where you ate really healthy yesterday and you toned down your oxidative stress. You might wake up a little on the pink side, take a supplement, test again, get to bright pink, then you have a really stressful experience, or you go on an ultra distance run after work, you test again, and now you're depleted. So I think the frequent testing, especially as you're learning your patterns of depletion, is important for you to recognize. It helps you recognize, I need to really focus on leafy greens this week. I haven't slept that well. I wonder if I'm mouth breathing. I should probably use my mouth tape, and I should go to bed earlier and turn the screens off at night, all those things. And then I think the other things to look for that are important are, there are so many hidden signs. They're not hidden. They're right out in front of us, but we don't pay attention to them. Signs that your nitric oxide levels are low include things like air hunger. Do you find yourself kind of just yawning during the middle of the day because you don't have enough oxygen exchange to the brain? Your neurotransmitters aren't functioning as well. You're getting fatigued. Fatigue in general is another sign. cold hands and feet because you're not getting adequate blood flow to the peripheral tissues. Headaches can be a sign of microvasculature in the brain that are not getting the oxygen they need. So then we encourage all the lifestyle things, the breath work, nasal breathing. There's lots of great YouTube videos out there. People can learn adequate breath work, getting in nature, getting in sunshine, eating leafy green vegetables, really balancing your diet and your life with some of these beneficial things that boost NO, and paying attention to those signs and symptoms that you thought were normal. If you think brain fog is normal, it's not just age related. It's a lack of oxygen and a lack of blood flow. Let's get it boosted. Bridge the nutritional gap with a supplement. It's easy. 2 caps a
So
day.
easy.
So easy.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
True story about me is that I was using it clinically I was using Berkeley Life specifically clinically for 6 years, but I wasn't taking it for myself. And I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't think it applied to me. And then I came to work with Berkeley Life. I found my people. I found my team that I was desperately looking to do more education with. I started taking it every day and I went, well, duh, I feel
Yeah.
great.
You clinicians, I hear this stuff all the time. I'll have somebody tell me like, well, you should really do X, Y, Z. You'll feel better. And I say, well, do you do that? Oh, no. Well, why not? Oh, well, I don't know. I'm special. I don't.
Yeah, and personally and in my clientele, it helped me reduce the other things that I needed to sort of prop me up. I didn't
Yeah.
need the stress adaptogen herbs. I didn't need as much digestive support. It's all balanced out now because my
Yeah.
blood flow is better. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've noticed less caffeine. Don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah, we hear that a lot.
Cathy, this is fabulous. I want to encourage everybody to really pay attention to this nitric oxide thing. It seems really exotic, when we talk about the science, but it's so fundamental. And the solution is just so easy. You can just test. Maybe put the strip under your tongue and you're bright magenta. Okay, great. You're clear. Everything's cool. Test, just
Yes.
test every day and see where you're at. And if you need help, it's a really simple fix. So
Very simple fix. Yes.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Very educational today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Make sure you get your face in the sun today. Get your feet in the grass. Take some nice deep nostril breaths and know that you're boosting your NO and you're going to feel vibrant going forward for years to come.
That's what we all want. Thanks so much, Cathy. Take care now.
All right. Thank you.
Ooh, I loved this conversation. Nitric oxide was a small molecule that I feel like most of us don't think about or aren't familiar with. I myself was not super familiar with nitric oxide, but the more that Dr. Eason was talking, I was starting to get blips of info that I'd received in the past, kind of coming to the surface. My dad does a lot of cycling and skiing, and I feel like he's supplemented with nitric oxide before, and I was like, oh, right, nitric oxide. But outside of maybe like athletes and people who are wanting to optimize their performance in sports, this isn't something that is widely talked about a lot.
Not to be confused with nitrous oxide,
Yes.
which is something that you either do as a party trick or the dentist gives it to you for like a happy moment in the dental care. Very different.
And as she was talking too, before you got into the segment, I was thinking, oh, nitrates, nitrites. How does that play into it as well? Because we hear so much about, don't eat processed meats. They've got nitrates and nitrites in it, preservatives. And I think she gave a really clear kind of distinction of, no, nitrates are good. You need them, right? Like nitrates convert into nitric oxide. And it's something that affects so many systems of your body. She was talking a lot about sexual function and dysfunction too, which immediately I was like, the amount of ads you hear nowadays for ED products is so astounding. And I'm like, maybe they just need some nitric oxide.
Something to try.
When did you start taking nitric oxide? Was that something that you were familiar with in the ski world?
I heard about this from Sean Green, who was actually one of the original scientists for Berkeley Life, like a long time ago, like 12 years ago. He was telling me about this, and it just didn't make any sense to me. It's like, I'm not a cardiac patient. Why are you telling me about this? And he was just sort of going on about the whole cardiac angle on this. And I just thought, well, I don't have anything to do with this. But then I started learning more about the impact of taking nitric oxide or having nitric oxide endogenously in your blood as far as altitude. And, what she was saying, it just makes your oxygen processing much more efficient. And I tried that. And that's when I became like a real believer in this, because that was just like, I didn't get a headache. I fell asleep. Everything was fine. So now what I've been doing is, it sounds super nerdy, but I like put the one of those strips under my tongue in the morning to see how it is. And it's, as she was saying in the segment, it varies. Like sometimes it's actually bright magenta. Okay, great. I'm good. That doesn't happen that often. Generally, it's sort of like white or barely shows anything. And it's like, okay. What did she say? She was saying like, because I'm under oxidative stress, I just think it's because I'm older. I don't know. Come on, let's get real, Cathy.
That part of the conversation was really interesting to me, particularly because I feel like outside of the nitric oxide test strips giving you insight into your NO levels, if your NO levels are consistently really low and you're waking up, or really low, or the test strip isn't super bright pink, that was also, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm thinking back to what she said, that it can give you insight into just kind of how your own physiology, like your gut microbiome, oral microbiome, like if you have certain levels of bacteria that's helping to break down the NO at like what rate. So I think it gives you a lot more information if you wanted to dig further outside of just like, do I have enough or do I not have enough NO? Which was really fascinating to me, particularly as someone who gets winded easily or like winded if I'm especially in higher altitude too. I'm so curious if I was introducing nitric oxide, if I'd see an improvement. So this was a fascinating conversation for me, not something.
Yeah. And, and it works pretty fast. Between when you swallow it and it shows up, it's about 45 minutes. So that's kind of great. I tried something the other day. You know how we all sort of get tired like 2 or 3 in the afternoon? So I put a strip under my tongue and it was just like barely pink. So I took a couple nitric oxide capsules and I felt better. So it's interesting. I hadn't thought about falling energy in the afternoon, oxidative stress, all that stuff. Humans are just so complicated, Margaret. Oh my God. What else can we measure here?
I know, whenever we have these conversations around one particular molecule or nutrient, it might be like, oh my God, this is the answer. This is the one thing I need to start taking. But NO, she had a convincing argument, especially because it is interrelated to so many processes in the body. And it is something that you lose when you get
And you can just test.
Yeah.
It's either there or it's not. It's easy, in 15 seconds, there or not. Okay, great. So
yeah,
I like
more supplements should come with test strips. Pee most of them out,
Well,
they're water soluble.
That's a funny thing. I was talking to a doc friend of mine this morning, and there's now a saliva test for melatonin, if you're deficient or not, because it apparently changes a lot with age, and people have some trouble sleeping. And I haven't heard the results on this. She's going to let me know whether this is valid or not. But I think the more of these sort of things that we can test and just immediately do something about, sounds good to me.
But we got some fun wellness stories to talk about this week as well. Are you ready?
What you got, Margaret? Bring it on. Come on.
All right. So our first one, long word here, super centenarian. She gave science some insights into the secrets of healthy old aging. So this was an article in The Guardian. It outlined how researchers studied Maria Grania Morera. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. But she was a super centenarian who was the world's oldest person before she died at age 117. And they found that her biological age was roughly 10 to 15 years younger than her chronological one. Her gut microbiome was also younger than her age. Her genome carried variants linked to heart and brain protection. She had low systemic inflammation, efficient fat metabolism, and gut microbiome, all of them looking more youthful. So they did a bunch of tests on her before she passed, and they found a few key insights into that differentiate between this idea of like being old from being sick, which we talk a lot about here. Nothing was like super surprising here, but really fascinating to look at someone who has age to that level and to still have health and all these protective factors. It's not that she's like an anomaly necessary, but not many people can say that in our modern world.
She's absolutely an anomaly. She's 117 years old. Even if her biological age, whatever that is 15 years younger, she'd be 102. So, okay. So I love these studies. It's like, oh, you have the biological age of a 102-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Like, what does that mean? I think that there were a couple of interesting things here. Her telomeres were shorter. And
Yes.
people think like longer telomeres good because there's this thing called the Hayflick limit, how many times your cells can divide, and as your telomeres get less and less, they can divide less and less. But having shorter telomeres is actually good because it prevents or limits cancer from spreading. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That was the most interesting part of this, I thought, because all the things that they were looking at were showing that her cells had clearly aged, her immune system was showing signs of aging, like she had acquired mutations, I guess, that led to leukemia. So it wasn't like she was in perfect health, but she was well protected. Her body was doing a really good job of protecting against other chronic diseases. So that protective factor was what they were really interested in looking at.
I'm kind of curious, like, how she lived her last 17 years. Like, if you're 100, so if you look at mortality statistics, like, your chances of dying in the next year are, like, probably better than 50%. So you'd be thinking if there's a 50% chance I'm going to die in the next year, what am I going to do? I think that's kind of interesting. And she lived like that for 17 more years. That strikes me as really kind of interesting.
Yeah, and like you don't come across people who get past 100, let alone like 117.
Well, she's biologically 105. Come on, don't exaggerate here, Mark.
True. Don't want to age her.
What?
I will piggyback off that article. There was a fresh paper published in Nature that frames the immune system not just as a victim of aging, but actually a driver of it. So their central thesis was to meaningfully slow or reverse aging, we need therapies that both boost waning immune function and dampen maladaptive chronic inflammation in tandem. So targeting immune aging may be one of the most holistic levers we have to affect our overall aging process, which they kind of touched on in the initial article, in the Guardian article about the 117-year-old woman. But we talk a lot about like inflammaging, but this study was bringing up this idea of immunosenescence.
Yeah.
Which
I think we've had a few guests on. I know we had Chris on last week talking about stem cells, and
Yep.
he's one of several people we've had on talk about really the immune system is just key to this whole thing. I interviewed Eric Topol a few weeks back, and he was saying the same thing. So much of this stuff that happens to us as we age is from a dysfunctional immune system. So I think it was Chris Rayner who brought up this idea that he had done a cancer marker tests on his patients through the years. And what he found is pretty much everybody has some amount of cancer in them all the time.
Yep.
And it's a question of whether the immune system clears it out. And, but as Topol told me, there's no test for how well your immune system is functioning. And we don't really know. There are tests for a lot of other things in your body, but there's nothing really for that. So, we have this idea about boosting immune function, what that could look like. We definitely know things that negatively impact the immune system. So, like you're not sleeping, you're in a lot of stress, you eat crappy food. Can't say your immune system is functioning, on a scale of 1 to 100. How well is it today? I don't know. No idea. Nobody does. So, but I think this is really one of the main targets of investigation around age-related diseases these days.
Yeah, this one really caught my eye. No matter what else you do to age well, if the immune system is not on board, that's not not gonna
Yeah.
happen. Our last one up here, I know that you work closely with the Global Wellness Institute, so I'm
Yeah.
curious if you had come across this one, but this idea of wellness real estate. So GWI, they published Build Well to Live Well the Future, and it's an updated version of their pioneering 2018 Wellness Real Estate Report, which argues that the next frontier in wellness is architecture and urban planning. So the report maps out how design choices in homes, offices, and neighborhoods can support physical, mental, social, and environmental well-being. We were talking a lot about like our own body, right, and how
Yeah.
we can dictate how we're aging well, but this idea of our external environment
Yeah.
and how we're setting that up can influence us. Have you come across this report?
I have, and I think that one of the great delusions human beings have is that they impact their environment doesn't impact them. So you buy a house, and you think, well, I'll just like force this thing, it'll be fine. I'm irritated by these 5 things. This thing makes me feel uncomfortable, but it's okay. It's not. The house wins. The building wins. You adapt to it. It doesn't adapt to you. So I think that, we're hearing a lot about biophilic design, which is just bringing in more elements of nature, bringing in lighting patterns that mimic nature, air, things like this. I was recently at the One Hotel, which is across the river over here, and we profiled Adam, who won an interior design award for it. And it's like, there are all these walls of plants. So there's a lot of concrete, but the concrete is like filled with plants going up, I don't know, high, like 50 feet. It just feels really nice compared to like a carpeted, sheetrocked big hotel. And so, these things sort of swing in waves. I live in this essentially sealed giant glass box. And I think what's happening is you're seeing more and more emphasis on bringing these sort of wellness features into the building. And I think that it's more than just, you can filter the air, but we can do better than that. So I think that's going to be a big selling point going forward for all developers.
Plant thing, I do not have a green thumb, but I constantly have plants in my place.
Yeah.
Ones that I know that I will not kill, because again, like certain plants do a really good job of like filtering out mold,
right,
toxins in the air, and it's just like happy to look at too. I feel like if you are in a space that could be having like I don't know, you don't feel that great in it, like you were saying, or it just feels like really bland, and like you are just kind of in like a gray box, then mentally that's going to affect you too, and then that affects your health as well. So there are all these kind of like micro adjustments we can make to our environment. Even just getting a plant on your desk, if you're working in a cubicle, that can have like a huge effect on just your mood, and even maybe your air quality and your little bubble that you're at. But thinking about it in like a larger design space of like how we're designing cities, I'm even thinking about New York. I'm totally forgetting the name of it right now, but the old railway that they've turned into a walking path. Yes, the High Line. Thank you. That like having those green spaces in urban cities are important as well. So whenever they decide to do that, it always makes me smile. So if you love a good story, whether it's a wellness news story or like our profiles that we feature each week, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. This week we have Mark Rampolla. His profile, he is the coconut water entrepreneur and the author of the upcoming book, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Freedom. And on Sunday, speaking of people over 100, we have our mini profile that'll be coming up with one of our oldest interviewees who is now 103. And we got a healthy recipe, great for protein, energy, and nitric oxide support. We got some turkey and veggie meatballs, which are delicious. But let's talk about our It's Not Too Late story for this week. We have a shout out from Zinnia on TikTok, who wrote in about her mom. She said, "My amazing mom still slalom water skis at 72. Not many still water ski, let alone slalom ski." Have you slalom skied, being a skier yourself?
It's hard. There's a sort of a trick to it.
I'd imagine you need a good center of gravity. It's not.
You need a powerful boat, for one thing, and, to sort of balance yourself over the single ski and then pop up requires some strength and coordination. The last time I tried that, there's a lot of frustration. You don't do it right, you just sort of get dragged and drown. Yeah, slalom skiing is a wonderful sensation.
Yeah, this is one of those things that seems so effortless, and then you try to do it, it's so hard. So kudos for her, to her for still doing this, and at 72, that is awesome. Love that. So if you'd like to share your story, you can go to ageist.com/story to read more like this one. We love to hear from you. And if you send one in, you could be featured on the podcast and or our site.
That's it for this week. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the Ageist newsletter. Go to ageist.com/newsletter. Stay strong, stay vibrant. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.